Called out from Antioch of Syria, Barnabas and Saul, also known as Paul, sailed to Cyprus with John Mark as an aide. They worked westward till Paphos, where they had given an audience with the Roman proconsul Sergius Paulus. A false prophet in the proconsul circle tries to interfere, but the proconsul believes. Sailing north to Perga, John leaves for home, but Paul and Barnabas continue on to Antioch of Pisidia, where Paul preaches Christ in the synagogue. On the next Sabbath, with many pagans coming out to hear, synagogue leaders rise in opposition. Paul then turns to the Gentiles, and the word spreads widely. Eventually, synagogue and city leaders cast Paul and Barnabas out of the city, and they move on to Iconium, where many Jews and Gentiles are converted during an extended stay. But when enemies plan to stone Paul and Barnabas, they escape south to Lystra, where Paul heals a man crippled from birth. Amazed, the locals presume them to be gods and ready a sacrifice, which they refuse. But things turn violent when agitators from Antioch and Iconium pursue. Paul is stoned, dragged from the city, and left for dead. Surviving, Paul and Barnabas move on to Derbe and teach many, after which they reroute and return to Antioch of Syria. During this interim, some men from Judea come in and attempt to Judaize the church here. This takes Paul to Jerusalem and back in resolution of the issue. Journey 2. Wanting to revisit the churches from the first journey, but not agreeing whether to take John Mark again, Paul and Barnabas split ways and split the work. Barnabas and John Mark go to Cyprus, while Paul and Silas, a prophet from Jerusalem, head northwest. Returning to Derbe and Lystra, Paul is joined by young Timothy. Traveling further to Troas, he is joined by Luke the physician. Sailing to Macedonia, they come to Philippi, where Lydia, a woman of means, hears the word, believes, and is baptized. Later, Paul and Silas are beaten and jailed, but before morning, the jailer himself hears the word, believes, and is baptized. Coming to Thessalonica, Paul faces synagogue opposition, but has a productive work. When opponents assault a house where he'd been, Paul and Silas go by night to Berea, where the gospel is better received in the synagogue, and many believe. When Thessalonian enemies pursue, Paul sails to Athens, where he engages philosophers and speaks to Areopagus. Coming to Corinth, the capital of Achaia and a notoriously immoral city, Paul labors a year and a half, and many believe and are baptized. After pausing at Ephesus, but hoping to return, Paul sails back east. Third journey. Returning to Ephesus, Paul spends about 3 years in this leading city, and the gospel spreads widely, so much so that idol makers, fearing a loss in sales, ignite a large riot. Paul revisits Macedonia and Greece, receiving contributions for poor saints in Jerusalem. Discovering a plot is against him as he's about to sail back, Paul reroutes to Macedonia. Luke rejoins him as he sails to Troas, and he meets with the Ephesian elders at Miletus. Then, despite warnings of his impending arrest, he returns to Jerusalem, where he is falsely accused. Imprisoned for 2 years in Caesarea, appeals to Caesar, and sails through storm and shipwreck as a prisoner to Rome, where he continues to teach and write. And that's where the book of Acts ends.